Hello one and all, and welcome to another episode of Baggers Chat. My name's Mitchell Pattinson, and as always, I'm joined by Ethan Duffy, and round one is here. It is here. It is 4 days away now. We will release this on the Monday morning at 9 a.m., but obviously round one, I can't believe the nerves had already started popping, Ethan Duffy, but first things first, mate, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Like we kind of kick off most episodes, you get a little bit more excitement as the weeks go on, but it's finally here. We're doing a preview. We're not talking about fucking drafts. We're not talking about trade views. We're not talking about, what are they doing on the training track. We're talking about Carlton v Richmond this week, Pato, and it's just going to be exciting. Obviously, there's a bit of nerves, but a bit of confidence also heading into it. Not overly confident, but like we say, we always back in our baggers, mate. So it's going to be a good game.
Spot on. And are you more confident for this year than you were last year? Because I know me, I wasn't too confident. But this year, are you feeling more confident for the Carlton Blues to get up against the Tigers?
I think so. I think last year we still had that the burden of not beating them for a decade, which was nothing. I think it was like 2012 round one last time we beat them in round one. So we finally got that hoodoo done and ticked off, so we don't have to worry about that. It's more a new era, I guess you could say, now in the rivalry of Richmond Carlton. I think their list is gotten a little bit better in terms of a few recruits, but you just don't know how their veterans are going to go for mine this year. But I think it's going to be a good contest. You look from line to line, and there's stars around the ground all over the place. Obviously, we like to say we've got more stars, but we're not entirely sure because round one, it's too early to tell right now. But Pato, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and I think that definitely ignites the rivalry, as you just said. Then I think the odds also on sports betting, they're quite even now, which is really good to see. And obviously, we don't really, obviously we like to say gamble responsibly, but I think it's just also good just seeing the tips now that it's kind of more a little bit even, because it used to be very much 80% Richmond, 20% Carlton, but now it's quite even. I think Richmond are just the favourites against us, but who knows? Because when it gets closer and the teams start to come in, who knows? So obviously we'll just touch on a few details for the game, and it's obviously our away game. So I think there's expected to be 90,000+, which is absolutely fantastic. I think general admission is completely sold out, which I think is great. It's a 7:20 start on a Thursday night. So obviously we're very used to that actual start, because Richmond v Carlton is just it just sounds so good to just hear that it's 4 days away, that it's this Thursday. So absolutely can't wait. I mean, you can probably hear it in my voice. I'm like, we haven't even, the game's not even here yet, and I'm already starting to sound a little bit nervous, but I just can't wait for it. I just can't wait to be at the G, just the countdown, just everything. AFL is back. Football is back. So don't know if I'm more excited about the Blue Baggers being back or the AFL, but to just touch on a few things before we get into depth to in the game, we'll just touch on a few a bit of news that's come out within the club. The past episode, since the past episode that we recorded, obviously today Sam Docherty is re-signed. Absolutely massive signing. He's obviously signed until the end of 2025, but brilliant signing, because you think that Sam Docherty would maybe take a little bit of a pay cut to stay with the club. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's always good. He's been a Blue for his whole life. Obviously brought up as a Blues fan. He's been through a lot, Doc, and he just brings that culture to the club. I feel like the way we started the year was off the back of his effort to get to round one last year, which was how did he even get to that game, which was ridiculous. Following his cancer treatment and all that type of stuff. Is just amazing. And obviously 2 years. He's a little bit older now. So what is he, 28? He'll be 28. Probably end of that deal is probably 30, 31. So he's at the peak of his powers right now. And I think he looks in tremendous shape. I thought he was being fantastic in both practice games, especially that Sydney one. I think he had over nearly 30 touches or so. So it's massive, Pato. And there was a little bit of chatter. There's a bit of chatter about maybe North Melbourne bringing him as a kind of older option. But come on now, he's not leaving the Blues at this stage. He's been through the shit at this club, so he really deserves to be on the more rewarding side of the Carlton Football Club.
Yeah, spot on. And I think towards the end of the year, we might actually touch on a certain North Melbourne player, because we might bring in the other Mackay twin. But yeah, like as you said, then 34 touches against Sydney in the Pracky game. You can't really look too much into it just because it is a practice game. But 34 touches with 24 kicks, that's definitely his strength. And I'm not too sure exactly what his efficiency was, but I think it was quite high. Yeah, 85% efficiency, which was absolutely fantastic. So I think that was almost a game high. So if not very close to it. So maybe Errol Gordon was close to it. But as I said, with Sam Docherty, because we were about to touch it on, we were about to touch on it just a little bit later in the episode. But Sam Docherty for round one, do you think he's going to start in the middle, or do you reckon he's going to start in the defense?
I think he'll start in the back half for mine. I don't think that's going to rule out him coming in midfield. I think obviously with Walsh out, I think we have to kind of bring Doc in at some stage in the game, just to, give, Kennedy or Hewitt a rest, or a Chera or something like that. I just think he will end up going in little spurts. I think, Zach Fisher will as well, go into the midfield at some stage during the game. So it's a good thing to have, though. He can play. He's a midfielder. He's really built like a midfielder. He's obviously been playing in the back half for most of his time at Carlton, but he was meant to, be a midfielder. And he's, these years, he's 28 now? He's probably at his peak. He could definitely be a midfielder for most clubs, really. But I do like him in the back half, though.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just think with a little bit of not a lot of. It's not like we don't have like a lack of options down there, but I just think with maybe us debuting Lockie Cowan, I think that's why you just might have to start Sam Docherty down there, because Richmond have so much star power and firepower down there. And you see like a Dustin Martin, and obviously we'll get a little bit more into it later on in the episode, but they've just got a lot of big names. And you think that if a Sam Docherty does go to a player like that, you can kind of trust him to do the job rather than maybe a Lockie Cowan going, like a first gamer going to Dustin Martin or a Shy Bolton. You can that's a lot to ask of a young player, but who knows? So I completely agree. I think Sam Docherty is going to start in their back line. But now we'll move on to some more news that also has come out today. There's been a bit of news, and well done to you, Duff, because you posted a lot of stuff throughout the day on the social medias. But the leadership group confirmed exactly the same with what it was last year. Patrick Cripps captain, with Sam Walsh and Jacob Wiedering vice captain. Not too sure if that is the complete leadership group, and if it is only those three being the leadership group, fantastic. Because I know that there's a few clubs that have like 7 or 8 leaders, and like there's some pros, but there's also some cons to that. Because you have 8 leaders, and you're hearing different stuff and different game styles, game plans, all this stuff. It just gets a little bit too confusing. So obviously Patrick Cripps is the main sole leader that you kind of take all the game plans off. But also you have a guy like Jacob Wiedering in the back line where, say, a Lockie Cowan, if he's lost, Wiedering's all over it. And also just having a young star as in Sam Walsh, who might be a future captain. Who knows, though? Because, also Jacob Wiedering's not that old either. So with these guys being in the leadership group, Duff, what's your thoughts?
It's fantastic. You only need 3. You really only need 3 out, maybe 3, 4. You might have just some other leaders, but it's like you said, it's getting a little bit ridiculous with some of these leaders. I think Brisbane have half their list as their fucking leadership group. Sorry about the F-bomb, but it was needed. Like, come on, man, what do they got? 10 leaders or something like that? I know that some of them do end up, they might have leaders in the VFL as well who are on the AFL list but play predominantly in the twos and want to be leaders at that level as well. But these 3 you can't really. They're leaders in the way they go about their football, but also off field. You always listen to their interviews. They always speak well and always present themselves well. And they just they lead by actions. And like you said, I honestly think Wiedering will be the next captain after Cripps, and then obviously Walsh can be captain at some stage, or it doesn't have to really. You don't have to be an official title to be a leader. We've got other leaders of the club that are in the leadership group. You got Ed Kernos and even George Hewitts. There's a few leaders out there, and obviously there's going to be leaders in Harry Mackay in years to come. So it's a good leadership group, mate, and these 3 are absolute superstars. Completely
agree. With in particular, you don't need to be like, I hope players aren't really growing up to be, I would love to be the captain of. Of course, it's a great accolade to have and to actually say, to look back on and be like, yeah, I was captain of Carlton Football Club. It's a great accolade to have, but also you kind of look at it and be like, oh, well, like the mentors in the club also for the younger players is also a really big thing as well. So who knows?
Yeah.
But even like a Matt Kennedy is here. Like I know that I've heard a lot of Holland's interviews and him
Yeah.
speaking quite a lot on who's been really good for him at the club, and you kind of like he named Blake Acres as well, which
Yes.
I really do like. But I think with Hollands is he's saying that Acres is has a lot of leadership qualities, but I don't think Acres will ever be a captain. So
No, he won't.
other stuff like that where they're really good, maybe on field and maybe even 1-to-1, but they might not be a leader on the field.
Yeah.
In sense, they kind of are a leader on the field because
Yeah.
because say like an Acres, I would expect him to try and point. It's exactly like that. So
Correct. Yeah.
you can have different sort of leadership styles without being an actual captain. So I reckon it's great to see those guys. I mean, it obviously worked last year with Cripper being the sole captain. So I think it's great to see those guys once again in the leadership group. But now we'll move on a little bit more to the game. So we'll obviously start on with the obvious news that we kind of wish that we could see him round one, but I think it's pretty much confirmed that Sam Walsh won't be playing round one. But obviously that means that there is a spot open with Sam Walsh being out, and whether that is an Ollie Hollands or an Ed Curnow, we're not too sure. But Duff, if you were to name one name right now, who would it be?
Oh, it's tough. Hollands does look good, but I was reading a bit of Twitter today, just talking about Ed Curnow and the shape he's in right now. He's looking very, very good, and he's that type of guy who could be that last guy on the bench. Comes in if a Taranto's off the hook a little bit, he's getting a bit too much of the ball. You go, Ed, you fucking follow him for 2 quarters. You know what I mean? Like he's that type of guy. He can free up a Cripper or free up Chera and etc. So if I go into round one, it's tough. But as a mid, I'd probably go Ed Curnow, but Hollands provides that width, and he can be amongst that O'Brien Acres rotation that we've touched on quite a bit.
Yeah, and whether that is because, as you said, then like as you mentioned, then with Lockie O'Brien, whether I don't know if that is maybe if O'Brien is playing, that probably rules a Hollands out. But
Yeah.
Hollands can also play a wing, but also Ed Curnow could play a wing as well because he's got the stamina to kind of run both ways. I personally would like to see Ed Curnow in that Walshy role on the ball rather than on the wing, because once again it's a bit like David Teague where you play players outside of their own position. So we'll move on now to the practice match that happened through the week. Senior players, that still is a chance for round one. So we'll just touch on a few players that might be in contention, but whether that means that they're not match fit, where they might not get we won't risk him for round one. But I just want your thoughts quickly, Duff. So Mark Pitner played 4 quarters, which is great to see. I think he's pretty much a lock for him to play. Mitch McGovern only played 3 quarters, but I think that was a little bit more a precaution sort of thing, just to try and make sure that he gets through to not add any more injury. And also Jack Martin, which is really nice to see him play 4 quarters, but also played midfield minutes, which is nice to see. So I think at the start of the game, he started on the ball with Pitnet. I think he did a tap straight down to Martin. So with those guys, do all 3 of those play round one, even though that they haven't played a lot of AFL standard match footy? And if so, do they all play, or who would you choose out of those 3?
I rule out Jack Martin straight away.
Okay.
I don't think he plays round one. I think he has the ability to play round one, and he's good enough, but I just don't think he's been in a similar situation as Gov. Like, we just don't really. It's not an injury. It's just more a program they're under. You know what I mean? I think everyone goes, "Oh, he's being rested for the Sydney game. He's injured again." But I don't think he was injured. I think it's more of a program, and we're taking precautions, like you said. I think Gov will definitely play. I think he has to play. He's very, very important to our back 6. So he can fly. Obviously, you got big guys like Lynch and Rewalt. So I won't touch on their players, but we'll move on. I think Gov will play. Pitto, absolute lock, tore apart Nan Curvis last year, so looking forward to that happening again. But I just think he's that tap ruckman. He's a big fella. They're both big fellas, him and Nank. So I don't think Pitto will let himself get bullied by the Nank. But he really, with Pitto, what I like about him is he creates first use for our midfielders. I think in that first 5 rounds, you could see our clearance were, how good was it? Like, it was just winning clearances all the time. He'll go, Walsh, Cripps, but the big fella's hitting it down here. Like he's, to advantage. I think he was highest in the league before he got injured. So very underrated ruckman. And, you look at it now and you go, geez, we got him on the cheap, didn't we? And it was pretty good recruiting considering, he hadn't played many games at AFL level at the Hawks. So, so I think Pitto and Gal for me, Matt.
Yeah. It's very interesting about Martin because I was probably on I was kind of looking at the other way and being like, I think Jack Martin might have to play for his fit because we speak about it so much through these episodes and actually it's quite annoying because the type of potential that can change the game in the matter of minutes, but also, yeah. And like as we saw last year, like he was like those two moments are the game winners. It really is. Like he kicked a goal to put us in front, then he gave an absolute freakish handball off to Fisher to put us 2 goals in front. So that's a thing. I'm on the other spectrum where I think Martin plays. If he's fit. I think he has to play. I think he just has to play. So it really is down to if he is match fit, if he is ready to go. You don't want to go 10 minutes into the first quarter, see Jack Martin running off, then straight away hamstring injury, check the AFL app, Jack Martin out. You don't want to see that. And you know that it could happen with Jack Martin, but also it could happen with a lot of players. So now we'll get a little bit more into the forward line, back line, and also the midfield and obviously the ruck battle as well. But we'll start off with Richmond's dangerous forward line up against our back line. The forward line does worry me. It does. I reckon that's one of the biggest forward lines. I reckon that's the game changer from their end. If their forward lines fit and firing, round one, I reckon that is the one where it is scary to actually see these names up against our back line. But obviously with Lynch and Rewalt down there as the key forwards, but also Martin hasn't played much midfield at all, and a lot of Richmond supporters are saying that is a big thing if Martin is just playing forward because we know how good he's been against us, and also Shai Bolton as well, and also Maurice Rioli down there. Expecting he plays, I think he does. I think he's a very underrated forward, and also transitioning Taranto down there as well. It's quite a frightening sort of forward line down there, but. Overall, is there anyone out of those names who is the most threatening to you? And if so, how do we try and stop that player?
Yeah, it is. It's a bit scary, isn't it, looking at those names? I think for mine, I think we've been okay on Rewalt. I think we're okay on Rewalt last couple of years. I think more for mine, it's Tom Lynch. I think he really takes the game. A lot of Richmond's wins, he takes it by the scruff of the neck and kicks 7 or 8. So really, I think we're going to lock him down. Obviously, you lock Rewalt down toughly, but I think Lynch is that key pillar now that plays consistently good footy, kicks goals every week. So Lynch for mine is probably the number one danger in terms of key forward. Probably the second. You can't really go past us and Martin, but I think we can get him. I don't see why we can't, match up on him. We've got the small defenders. You got Nick Newmans, you got Docherty. You got those guys who can lock down. And Nick Newman's one of those guys we forget about a lot. And he plays very good, consistent football. And Shai Bolton, I won't touch on him much, but he's quite dangerous. And let's hopefully he's not showing the ball to our halfbacks again. So, and Taranto, like you said, Jesus, it's pretty scary. But once again, MCG Lights. I don't reckon he's played a big game like this before, unless it was a final. But a game like this, not in the regular season, with people screaming at you and Richmond fans getting up and about. So it's big. I think he's ready for it. To be honest, unfortunately, hopefully he's not ready for it. But I think he's going to be dangerous in that forward line, and also in that midfield, kicking goals from there too.
Yeah, and I was just about to touch on that. How will he handle it? How will Tim Taranto actually handle the pressure of being the marquee player at the Richmond Football Club? Because at Giants, he was behind a Josh Kelly or a Stephen Cornelio. He was behind all these players, but now he's the marquee player, and he's probably taken over that Dustin Martin role of the marquee player and also Trent Cotchin, but he's not even played a game for the club. So how will he handle that pressure? Playing in front of 90,000, in front of a home crowd of Richmond fans, and also round one, game one, over a million, like way over a million views on the TV watching this game, and the amount of times that Taranto's been talked up.
Yeah.
How does he stack up against us? But also, how do we actually stop this guy? And I reckon this is the guy that Vossi needs to circle around if we were to tag and maybe Kerno comes in, go to Taranto.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that practice game, I think it was against Melbourne, but also the match sim that he played. Fantastic footballer, so underrated. And I really think Taranto is the guy. But as you said, then we have the firepower and we have the players to stop this guy. So
Yep.
I really do agree, and it's going to be interesting to see how Taranto actually goes in front of those bright lights on Thursday night. But obviously, expecting with Young maybe going to Rewald and Wiedering going to Lynch. Out of Martin and Bolton, who goes to Martin and who goes to Bolton? If you had to choose.
Oh, it's tough. It's looked like the last couple of years, Doc's actually gone to Bolton when he's gone forward. So I wouldn't mind seeing that matchup. I think Doc's got a bit of revenge or a bit of redemption on Bolton for his actions last year. But I wouldn't mind a Nick Newman on Martin.
Yeah.
I just think he's a lockdown. He just does his job. But I think for mine, it's the back six as a whole. We've got to be working together. It's not just 1-1, 1v1, 1v1, 1v1. If you work together as a back six together, it's really going to disable them from scoring goals at will. So, and they can do that on occasion. The Tigers, they can really put the scoreboard pressure on you early and in patches of games. So, we've just got to stop it. There's nothing worse, is there? Round one, when we kept getting smashed and the ball's heading into the inside 50, and Dussavarn's going to crab it and stiff arm fucking Liam Jones or something like that, and then he kicks a goal from 50 and they all roar. But it's not going to happen this year, Pato. So big. It's just the back six is so important. It's so important. It's making me nervous, but we've got Jacob Wiedering down there, for Christ's sake. He's the best defender in the league.
Yeah. And you said it perfectly there, it is so important. This is why this is the game changer, because it is their best asset, the forward line, pressure, all these guys down there up against what we think is quite, like, it's one of our most underrated lines. And us as Carlton supporters, we think we're pretty fucking good down there. So I think as you said then, Jacob Wiedering is still one of those guys that he's just underrated. And he's probably he's up there for one of the best key defenders in the game. So now we'll move on now to the midfield battle. This is once again a really it's a big contest, because we just spoke about how big of a contest their forward line against our back line is, and how that's going to change the game. But now we're going to touch on some players that is in that midfield battle that really can be the game changer towards their side. So we're just going to touch on a few midfielders quickly. So obviously we have Patrick Cripps, George Hewitt, Adam Shearer, Matthew Kennedy, and Blake Acres, hopefully if they're all fit, up against Prestia if fit, and Jacob Hopper, Tim Taranto, Jaden Short, and also Shai Bolton. So there's obviously a few players in there that might transition forward, as you just spoke on with Taranto and Bolton. But yeah, so out of Richmond's midfield, who is the player that you're most worried about in that midfield?
Yeah, it's a better midfield this year, I think. I think they match up well against us, I think, this year, especially. I thought we kind of overpowered them in that kind of back end of that first game last year in terms of our midfield and clearance work. They just didn't have that depth, I thought. They had Bolton going through there, but obviously now with Hopper and Taranto just filling that void in the midfield, it's going to be important for them to really hit the season running and get going. So, back to your question, it's tough. I think Presti is their best midfielder. I think whenever he's out, there's always, there's question marks over Richmond whenever he's out, like literally. I think he missed that last quarter round one last year, and look at their clearance numbers in that. Don't think they won a centre clearance or something like that in the last 10 minutes of game or something like that. But yeah, for mine, it's Prestia. Obviously, if fit, I think he's had some issues. He's always had some soft tissue injuries and issues around there. But for mine, I think it's him. I think his stoppage work is unbelievable. I think he's really, really important for them. And like I said before, I think you can also, if you have an Ed Kerno, on the bench, starting on the bench, rotating through the middle. We can always get him to tag Prestia. Like you said before, Taranto as well, depending on his impact on the game. I think we'll go in there not tagging straight away. I don't think we're that type of midfield. I think we've got stars that will be tagged. Will be tagged in Cripps and Hewitt and Chero. They're all damaging on their days. So yeah, Prestia for mine, mate.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you mentioned there how we don't really have any taggers that could actually go into that role to well and truly tag that one player. But also, George Hewitt is a past tagger.
Yeah.
So if we really need a tagger and say if an Ed Kerner isn't in there and there really is no other option to really put a player onto like a player that is absolutely dominating the game, you might have to put a George Hewitt there because, I mean, as you just said then, I don't think we've ever been the team to really go in. Like, we want to play on our own terms. We don't expect them to absolutely dominate and kind of hold it off, really. We want to try and go in and be like, well, we can stick with them. If not, we can do better. So, of course, if we have to go to our plan B, plan C, plan D, of course, that's when you have to move on to maybe you have to try and stop this guy because he's impacting the contest too much. And whether that is a George Hewitt might be stepping in or even an Adam Chera. So, I mean, you speak about a lot of midfielders there and there is a lot of firepower in our midfield, but also Brett is that one dominant play in there that really can change the game. And as you said, Ben, I think you were right with that stat with the clearances. I don't think they won too many clearances, if not any, in that last quarter when we really started to get a few goals in a row. I think it was 7 in a row. So it just shows how important he is in that midfield. So also with Taranto coming in there, and also Jacob Hopper, I reckon it's a huge inclusion for Richmond, and hopefully we can try to hold that off and if not, do better. So we'll now move on now to the ruck battle. This is once again a really vital component on this field. This could really change the game because if these ruckmen can really start to dominate, that's when these midfielders can really start to take the game on as well. So obviously Mark Pittonet, if he is fit, I think he will be. He's an absolute lock if he is fit, and also Tom De Koning, who we expect will be that combination. I know there's been a bit of talk between those guys, but I think Tom De Koning has to play up against a Nan Curvis. And I'm not too sure if Richmond are going to play an Ivan Soto. I'm not too sure. So even if they're not going to play a Soto, they have a guy like Bolter down back. So whether that is a Bolter coming in or a Soto coming in for that second ruck just because TDK is expected to play, how do you see this battle coming out, Duff, and who's going to come out on top?
Yeah, it's interesting, the whole Richmond situation. I think Nankervis obviously is their number one easily by a mile. Soldo's played a fair bit of footy the last couple of years, but he's been dropped a few times, if I'm not wrong, last year. He hasn't really been a lock often, and I think in the preseason games, Bolter was second ruck a fair few times. So, I think it'll be obviously Pitto and TDK. PDK, I almost said there, viewers, my bad. But Pitto and TDK, I think, really work well together. They've got different strengths for mine. And like I said before, Pitto's strengths really given our midfielders first use at stoppages and clearances in the middle, sorry. And, obviously TDK can fly and go forward and kick goals. And he's got that athleticism, as we've seen. He's got the potential to really skyrocket this year, hopefully, fingers crossed. But, Nankervis is very similar to Pitto. I feel like he's that big ruckman, aims to get that first chance, give his midfielders first chance at the footy every single time, and he's got good ball skills and foot skills for a big fella too. I think that's why he's always been rated quite highly and was a massive get when they got him in the 2017 pre-season. So, it's tough to really determine who's going to win. I think we really should be aiming to win this contest. If we want to be a real serious threat this year to other midfields, other teams, we've got to be really winning the ruck, contest. I think Pitto's vital, absolutely vital to this team. I think when he went down, we just lost that kind of edge in the midfield and that kind of strength and that, he throws his body around, he protects his teammates, obviously in a legal way, but what do you reckon, Pato? Because for me, I think it might be in Nankervis and Bolter. They usually throw Bolter around round one, don't they? You never know where he's going to play. Like, they put him up forward for 10 minutes last year, and then he was down back, and he's in the ruck. And it's like he's a good swing man to have, but I just feel like he's one of those guys. he's not fantastic in every position, but he's good in every position. You know what I mean? Like he's not a superstar.
Yeah. Yeah, and like that's when we'll probably just touch on our forward line later on, and that's I think whatever happens with their back line, that is going to be obvious to see what they are going to do with that second ruck, because I think Noel Bolter is definitely has the capability to play as that second ruck, but also if you really look at a Pitnet and TDK as our ruckman, they're both very genuine sole ruckman that can really. I mean, Pitnet can't really play forward, but when he isn't in the ruck and TDK that's when he goes off. Let's say with TDK, when he's not in the ruck, that's when he plays forward, and that's why it's so dangerous. So I think Anand Curvis, and I think it will be Soto. I really think Soto will come in just because you don't want one of these pit nets or TDKs dominating the contest, and they have the potential to do so. So I do completely agree. I think Porter has been shifted around a lot. I know last year we were about to come up against three key forwards in their forward line, Lynch, Rewalt, and Bolter. But then all of a sudden, I think he moved back halfway through the second quarter. So, it's just stuff like that where I think it's also sometimes a positive for Richmond, because we kind of prepare for something that we think they're going to do, but then they come out with maybe a Bolter or even a Shy Bolt and play in the ruck, Daffy boy. So we'll move on now to the Richmond forward line. Our forward line, and obviously coming up against their defense. I like to call Richmond's defense quite disciplined. I think they don't have a lot of star power. They do have a Liam Baker down there, but a lot of their defense, they're very underrated. And I think they're quite disciplined, as I just said. So, and one of those players who is quite disciplined is a Robbie Tarrant, and he could be out. So that's why, obviously we want to try and hope that both sides get their best side in. And if we do get the win, it shows that we are very much capable to beat these top sides if they do have their best 22 in. So if a Tarrant is out, I think a Bolter will go to Harry Mackay and stick with him the whole game. You can't change forwards, but you can't change matchups between these two genuine key forwards that can win the common medal. So I think a Noah Bolter would have a plan during the week if he does go to Mackay, and he just has to stay on him. And also Dylan Grimes, who usually plays on that small forward role, mid forward, that now he might have to actually step in and become. Even though Charlie Curnow is not your tallest key forward, but he very much can play like it. So I think a Noel Bolter and a Grimes might go to a Curnow and Mackay. But out of those two, is that quite similar to what you think might happen if Tarrant is out? And if not, who else do you think could step in?
Yeah, it's you look at that and you go, gee, we really if Tarrant's out, we really need to be stretching out their defense, because I feel like they don't have that kind of waitering, that kind of just currently they don't. And I know they got Tarrant, but he's just not to that level anymore. But you look at that Bolter to Mackay and then Grimes to Curnow, you go, gee, you really can stretch them out here, Obviously they got their other defenders and, Jaden Shorts and Bakers who find a lot of the ball, and Riolis, but I think the way they play their football is very attacking. That's how they won their premierships. So a lot of their defenders do tend to, get that ball forward and, aim to go forward rather than, sit back. So it's, like last year, Harry and Charlie had no impact really on that round one. I think Harry kicked one and Charlie barely got a touch. So it's a good sign. That is a good sign if we still won by 4 goals. So yeah, it's tough, but I just don't know. I really don't know, because Richmond can really pull some youngster out, and it could be a Gibkiss on a Curnow or something like that. I don't know. I hope it is at some stage, but you just don't know with Richmond, because I feel like I think that's why they've been good for so long, because they can adapt and change blokes around. And obviously with Bolter, he'd go play on Mackay and then he'll go up forward and kick goals for Richmond. And it's quite amazing, really, like how guys can do that in a short space of time. In a game of football, you can change positions. So, it's going to be tough, Pato.
No, as exactly what you just said then is with like a Gibkiss, we kind of expected him to play round one last year, but he actually came in and he actually played quite well. But also at times he looked a little bit lost, and he just there was times when if they didn't have a Tarrant or a Bolter or a Grimes down there, they could be lost. And
Yeah.
who knows that like a Robbie Tarrant might not be playing and they might have to play a Gibcus because they don't have, I mean, like I'm checking their stats now against Melbourne in the practice game and they didn't really have another key back down there. So I think a Grimes has to be that player that would come in and obviously he's the co-captain with Nankervis, but I think he might have to actually step up as that leader and go to the common medal favourite. So I think, like other than that, I just think that's probably the only two options that really can actually turn out to be that matchup because it's like Bolter is probably that guy that he can hold down a Mackay, but he is very used to shifting around. So if he's been given that role where you have to stop this guy, Big Harry Mackay, my word, Duff. So is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah. Just I'm currently looking through their list right now on their website. And obviously you've probably got Nathan Broad as well, who can play kind of tall, small. I think he goes all right as well. He's much more consistent than many of their other defenders. You look around and you go, gee, Grimes, he's at the back end of his career. Can he really go on a Kerno and match up against him if he's really flying at the ball? And Gibcus, another key defender here. Yeah. You look through it and you go, like it. Ben Miller, is he going to play? No, probably not. Like, no, I'm not having a go. I think that's their real negative. It's their key back. They just don't have any really. Like they do, but I just don't know how good they're going to be. I just don't think their output's going to be as good as they used to be in terms of Dylan Grimes and obviously Tarrant. If he plays or not, he's obviously a bit older now. I think he's like 33 or 34. So, we've really just got to stretch him out. And the ball use going inside 50 is crucial. Absolutely crucial. Don't give him any chance to get it straight back out at 50. Hit targets. Make sure Smalls are there to crumb. Put pressure on guys. The young guys. Gibcus. Put pressure on him. Tackle him. Motlops and Durdens and Sauce. Just really just putting that pressure on and, just making it really uncomfortable. Like making it feel like I don't want this ball to come back in our D50 because I know a Carlton forward's going to tackle me. Yeah. So, and like you say here, Durden, Motlop, Fisher, and potentially Martin. Like these guys kick goals for fun sometimes. So it's going to be very interesting, Pato, and it gets me excited because I look at their defence and it's a little bit weak. It's a little bit weak currently. I'm not going to call it weak because I don't want this to bite me in the ass, but I think it's their least, it's not as strong as their other lines, as I say.
Yeah, and I mean, to quickly just touch on then about how you said then about how we aren't shitting on Richmond's defense, but that's why I think if Richmond start to get some vital injuries and they start to lose some of their key players, that's when they start to get found out. In my opinion, because all the best clubs in the I was about to say in the world. I mean, we are just playing in the nation. So in the nation, I think. Like you'd name like a Melbourne or even a Geelong, like if they start to lose some of their key players, yes, it's massive, but they bring in other players to step in and fill that role. So, and I don't know I think it's more my bias towards Carlton, but that's what we're now starting to find now. Because if a Lewis Young or a Jacob Wenning does go down, you got a Sam Durden there. And yes, Sam Durden isn't absolutely he's not absolutely lights out key defender who's an All Australian, but he's a solid footballer that if he was to come in, you can trust him. You can trust him to do a role. So as you said, then I was about to say Nathan Broad, but I think with him he's a little bit more of a mid-size sort of defender where who knows? If you put him on a Kerno. But also talking about Silvani and TDK down there, TDK's another key forward. So you might have to put a Grimes on a TDK with also a Broad going to Kerno. So that's the thing. You kind of hope that Richmond supporters and also the club of Richmond is hoping that Robbie Tarrant is free to play. Yeah. But since he's got an injury cloud, who knows? Because he will go straight to Harry Mackay, and Harry Mackay is fit and firing and he's ready to go for round one. It's a scary prospect. So, absolutely well said there, Daffy Boy. I think we touched on a lot of stuff throughout the game, throughout the match details. Absolutely looking forward to round one. But now we'll just quickly touch on some match predictions that are we think might happen. We'll just touch on a few things. So obviously, I'll get your best on ground, your point of difference, and also your winner plus margin. So just take us through your three, Duff.
Yeah, so obviously I'm just going to go the simple best on ground. I think this guy is going to go back-to-back BOGs round one. Well, not based on Brownlow votes. Chera was best on ground apparently round one last year, according to the umpire. We'll move across from that. But Paddy Cripps, best on ground. I think he's going to have 30. He looks in ripping shape today. I saw a photo at training. If you haven't seen that, see that photo and you're going to be up and about. You were going to be up and about Thursday night. So Cripper for mine, best on ground. Point of difference. It's a good question to have for a prediction because round one, it could be a genuine guess. It can be a genuine guess. But for mine, I know I talk about him all the time, but I think he's going to light up the G round one. We're going to hear the moo go across the G, and it's going to be Lockie Cowan. No, there's always those players for good teams, and the young guy comes in and he really flourishes in a good system. And I feel like he can because he's hard at it. I just see him laying a tackle on Dustin Martin in front of the wing, member side wing or something like that. So Lockie Cowan. And for mine, I've got to tip the Baggers. Baggers by 13. I think it's going to be neck and neck, but I think we'll kick a couple and finish the deal.
Yeah. And I absolutely love your point of difference. I know that mine's a little bit different, but it's also quite similar in terms of new sort of players. So obviously I'll touch on my best on ground. I've got Harry Mackay because as we just touched on, if Robbie Tarrant is injured and a bolter has to go to Mackay, he could have an absolute day out. But also Charlie Kerner could have a day out. But yeah, also TDK or Silvani, as we just touched on, I think it can become extremely dangerous for this forward line, and that really can be the game changer. So I have Harry Mackay. I think it's still absolutely mind blown. Like I was mind blown when I was seeing him Carlton v Collingwood that matched him. He looked so fit, and he was taking grabs everywhere. He was kicking well. He was running everywhere. This guy's a freak, man, absolute freak. So I'm just so glad we've got Harry Mackay on our list. So he will be best on ground for me. Point of difference, Blake Acres. I'll put him on the wing, and I reckon he could get that. He could be the player that could get 25 to 30 touches and could be that point of difference where if he's kicking it to Harry Mackay or Charlie Curnow every second, who knows? He could well and truly get some Brownlow votes in that game. But my winner, I don't think I've ever tipped against Carlton. Where we were 2021 where we first started, where we were not the greatest football club of all time, Duffy boy, but I've tipped Carlton, and mine's 27 points. So I've gone a little bit more. I don't see it being a close game. I see it being quite neck and neck, and I think it's going to be very similar to last year, and pretty much like every single other round one clash. I don't think it's ever going to be. I mean, I know that there's been a few in the modern era, but I think there's just, especially this year, I think it's going to be neck and neck. And as soon as this one club kind of gets a little bit they kind of get a little bit of a run, they keep going. And they get 5 or 6 goals in a row. And I reckon it's going to be the same on Thursday night. I hope it's going to be Carlton. So I've tipped Carlton by 27 points. So as we've said throughout the whole episode and pretty much since every episode that we've done this year, we are just so excited for the season to start. Can't believe it's 4 days away. And of course, when this episode comes out, it's going to be 3 days. So it's just the countdown towards really round one. So other than that, Duffy boys, is there anything else you want to touch on?
Just honestly, all the fans just enjoy this moment. Just remember all those terrible, 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 terrible years we've had, and because I think it's finally the time we've turned the corner. Last year we ticked off a few hoodoos last year, got rid of a few hoodoos. Teams we hadn't beaten in a while, certain streaks, but we were that close to the 8 last year, and I honestly think we'll be a better team this year for it. I think we'll be a better team for the heartbreak of last year, and they're still hurting from that. In a way, obviously they've moved on, but they'll still remember that in the back of their minds. And I think they'll really push forward, and I think they'll push this club forward. And it's exciting, mate, because I don't think I've ever been this excited about a list. It's the best list I've ever seen, personally. So let's just back them in, and hopefully you see all you blue baggers at the G. Get loud because it's their home game. Make sure it's their fucking away game. Get in on, mate.
Completely, like extremely well said just then is like, our fan base is like, if we start to get a if we are probably in front by about 30 points with about 5 minutes to go, it can turn into our sort of home game. And you start to see all these Richmond supporters start to walk out. But also throughout the game, if we're louder, we can, like, Richmond is so well known for their fan base, and so is West Coast for having a very large fan base. We're now coming up. And if we can really start to get over the top with it, like we have, I mean, we are so biased, but let's be real. I think Carlton fans are by far the best fan base in the nation. I just think our passion and our hurt, we're now all looking for redemption. And as soon as we are starting to get better as a football club, which we are, it's just going to, like, I just can't wait until we actually start to succeed, premierships, finals, and hopefully, I mean, this is only round one, Duffy boys, so we'll move on a little bit. So we'll hopefully try and touch on a little bit later on in the season, where hopefully we are striving towards finals. But I just can't wait for the season to start, as you just said. But make sure everyone watching, viewers, try and like, comment, subscribe, try and share this channel around. It's still quite a new podcast. We started in 2021, but obviously, hopefully 2023 season is a big season for Carlton and also for us at Baggers Chat. So absolute pleasure doing this week in and week out with you, Daffy boy. And as always, Daffy, up the Baggers!